Hey there guys, Alex here from SPP, and today I'm joined by my colleague Dion
Hey everyone.
and also Bradley from semanticlinks.io for this case study.
Hi, how you doing, Alex and Dion?
All right, Bradley, before we get into the questions, before into like we start doing all this stuff, could you give us a quick introduction about yourself? Tell us what you do, what your agency is.
Sure. My name is Bradley Benner. I run semanticlinks.io, which is a white label link building service for other local SEO and local marketing agencies. So we provide white label fulfillment services for local marketing agencies, mainly on the link building side of things and citations, branded asset building, that kind of stuff. So off-page type SEO work is what we do at Semantic Links. That was kind of born out of a need because I also coach local SEO professionals to create a business around local SEO services and run their own agency. And in my coaching company, Semantic Mastery, I've gotten over the years, we've been doing that since 2014, coaching and teaching. I've been running an agency, my own local SEO agency, since 2010. But I never did white label services. I never provided white label services. I worked directly with like selling retail SEO services direct to business owners, like local business owners. So I've always worked in the local SEO space. But in 2014, I started teaching local SEO and how to operate an agency and perform local SEO services and create a business out of it, basically. And over the years, man, because I started the white label link building service in 2022. In January of 2022, I got hooked up with you guys at SPP in April of 2022. And but I had never run any white label services, and the reason why I started it, well, was two reasons. Number one is because I used white label link building services for my own local SEO agency, because like most other local marketing agencies, I didn't do the link building in-house. I did web design and SEO, like on-page and content and that kind of stuff in my agency, but I outsourced the link building. But what happened was around 2019, 2020 timeframe, I noticed that the links that I had been purchasing from my vendors were not performing or producing the results like they had been. It was kind of a declining effect from the links. And so I kept having to go spend more money, more of my client's retainer on buying additional links in order to achieve the same results. And so I wasn't going back to my clients, my local business clients, and telling them, hey, I got to raise your retainer because links aren't working and I got to buy more links. Instead, I just started looking for a way to build my own link building service or find another service that was going to be more effective. And I went on like an 8-month journey of testing different vendors, different services, different link types that I would, publish or produce on my own. And finally, after about 8 months, I found a particular method that I developed in-house that was incredibly effective, based purely on relevance. And well, then I opened that up once I realized it, I proved that it was effective, and I was able to duplicate or repeat those results multiple times for several of my own local business clients. Then I opened that up as an offer to my students at Semantic Mastery, my coaching students, my coaching members, to tell them, hey guys, I found this link building method that's based purely on relevance. It works incredibly well for local SEO, and I'd like to try it with some of you guys to see if it works in other industries. Because in my own local SEO agency, I work specifically with tree contractors or tree service companies. So I wanted to see if this link building method would work well with other local business verticals. So I offered it at an at-cost basis, so basically no profit margin, but just wanted to prove if it would work in other industries. I assumed it would, but I needed to prove it. And so I had a number of my students or members of my coaching community take me up on the offer, and so I started testing with their campaigns. And sure enough, we saw very similar results. And so in January of 2022, I said, man, I'm on to something. There's a gap in the marketplace for links with this type of relevance. And so I opened up a white label services agency. And so part of the reason why I decided to do that, though, was because, as I mentioned a moment ago, like I've been coaching since 2014. And over the years, I've had so many of my coaching members go through our training programs and say, hey, this is really, really good, but it's a lot of work. Can you do it for me? And for years, I would always turn that down and say, no, we just, I run my own local SEO agency. I don't have the capacity to do work for others, etc. But after so many times of people telling me like they wanted to give me money to do it for them, it was just a no-brainer. I can't believe I waited so long to start a white label services agency because I'll be honest, the white label services agency is my biggest revenue generator. It far exceeds the revenue that I generate in my own local SEO agency, and it exceeds the revenue that I generate in my coaching company. So, by far, white label services is a huge revenue generator for anybody in the marketing space.
That's very cool. Yeah, actually, I want to ask about it because we always have like some people or agencies who are interested in white label services, but obviously they're like not super sure how to set it up because sometimes they just go into your system and just buy for their own clients and then they have to deliver the services, right? So that's a little bit complicated. So with SBP's reseller program, for example, you could do the fulfillment automatically while they just handle the selling.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the way that I have it with my clients. So my clients are the agencies, and then they're out there selling their marketing services to retail local SEO clients. When I say retail, I mean I'm selling wholesale SEO services. They're selling them retail, and so we white label their reports and all that kind of stuff. But my point of contact are the agencies, and what's great for me is because I don't have to try to like. Just so you guys understand, in my own local SEO agency, I work with tree service contractors. They're not the most sophisticated bunch when it comes to digital marketing and that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to paint with such a broad brush, but a lot of those tree guys, they have like an aversion to online marketing, and like they just don't want to be involved. Like a lot of those guys still work off of like a notepad and like and paper calendars and stuff. I swear to God, they do. A lot of those guys, the younger guys are a little bit more technologically savvy, but a lot of the older guys aren't. So when I'm talking with them, it's not ever about talking about SEO and that kind of stuff. It's always about the results that are driven from what we can provide to them. So because they don't understand it, nor do they have any desire to. But when I'm working with SEO agencies through my white label services, I get to talk in the language that I'm, fluent in, which is SEO speak, technical jargon, that kind of stuff. And so I like it because I don't have to dumb it down, so to speak, to present my service offerings to a local business client. I can talk in the kind of technical terms that I'm used to talking in because I coach those SEOs too. So I'm so used to just always talking about talking to other SEOs about SEO that it's difficult to transition when I'm talking direct to a business owner and not be so technical. And, I'm sure you guys are aware, every time you try to talk to a business owner about SEO services and you talk as an SEO, like you lose them. You lose them like that because they just don't get it. They don't understand them. Why should they even care, really? You know what I mean? So it's just about the results that the SEO can produce for their business that they care about. So it's interesting because I actually enjoy the white label services more than the retail agency services because, again, I get to work with my people, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Very cool, yeah. Yeah, I think we have the different problem because we're a SaaS, but for us, when we talk to prospects or anyone interested in SBP, even if they're technical, they are still like comparing it to other software or whatever they already know. Like, is it like a CRM? Is it a little bit like ClickUp? And I was like, yes, and no, it depends. Like, then you have to explain it in a way they understand it because they already know that software or that software category.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Bradley, so tell me, when did you first recognize that Google was shifting towards semantic relevance, and what observation led you to develop your unique approach to link building?
It's a great question. Like I said, I said earlier, it's like around 2019, 2020, but it was around 2020 actually that I thinking a little bit more about it now. It was around 2020. Sometime in that year is when I noticed that the links that I had been buying from other vendors were not producing the same type of results. They were still producing a result, but not nearly as much of an effect from the links as what they were previously. So I just, like I said, kept increasing my spend on more links. And I also run Google Ads. We're not a PPC agency, but for my local SEO clients or my tree service contractors over the years, I've managed a number of Google Ads campaigns. And the way that ads work is the way that the ads would show impressions. I don't know if you guys are familiar, your audience is familiar, I'm sure many of them are, but with like single keyword ad groups. It's kind of what they call SKAGs, single keyword ad groups. And that was the way that we used to set up campaigns in Google Ads for many, many years. And it was very effective, especially when dealing with like local lead gen and that kind of stuff, because we could set up exact match keyword campaigns and get very, very specific with landing pages and ads and all that. And it worked incredibly well. And but then around 2020, I noticed that Google stopped honoring exact match keyword sets. In other words, even when you put keywords or search queries in a square bracket, which would indicate an exact match, you would see in the search queries report that the ad was given an impression for, you would see all of these additional variants, not even close variants, because previously, before this algorithm shift, it used to be where an exact match keyword type, Google would only show that's an ad for that specific search query or a close variant, which was typically only going to be a singular versus a plural version. Like, in other words, like tree service or tree services would be a close variant. But then all of a sudden in 2020, I noticed that the ad campaigns, even the exact match or single keyword ad groups with the exact match types, would start showing, I'd get in the search query report impressions for like tree service, would say tree service, arborist service, tree service near me, tree removal service, tree trimming service, tree care service, like all these different keywords that before you would have to separate out into separate keyword groups or single keyword ad groups. And so anyway, that started me on a journey of trying to understand what had changed. And that's when, at some point, I was also a member of a program with Jimmy Kelly in the SEO industry. Some people might know that name, but Jimmy Kelly had mentioned about the algorithm had kind of shifted away from a keyword-based algorithm into more of an entity-based algorithm. And we knew the semantic web was evolving, like we were going from a keyword-based algorithm to an entity-based algorithm, which is why my companies have all have the semantic in their name. Semantic Mastery is my coaching company. Semantic Links is my link building company, because we knew that it was shifting into that, but it didn't. I started learning about semantic web technology, semantic search, essentially, back in 2014. And so that's when we launched Semantic Mastery, my coaching company. And so I expected that shift to occur sooner, but it didn't. Until around 2020-ish is when it was kind of revealed to me that the shift had occurred. And I started seeing that in ad campaigns first. But that's what brought it to my attention, right? And so then once I realized that Google was treating search queries differently, not the same as they had before, and now it was based on an entity level versus a keyword level, and that's why a single keyword ad group could get an impression for all these other variants now, not even close variants, but just variants, because all of those search queries or keywords, search phrases, whatever you want to call them, are related to an entity. So the way I look at it is an entity is a person, place, or thing, and Google has now, because of large language models, Google's large language model is fully integrated into its search algorithm. It doesn't look at search queries and keywords anymore. It looks at entities. And when it looks at an entity, Google has in its database, its cache, its memory, it has all of the search queries that are associated with that entity. They've already cataloged all of that stuff. So instead of optimizing for search queries, if we optimize for entities, it's much more efficient for Google's algorithm. It's much more efficient for them to process data and serve proper results, because instead of having to get all the way down to the specific phrase level or word level, it can now, at the entity level, they're broader concepts, and so it's more efficient for Google to understand and serve results based on entities, because if a page is optimized for an entity, it can rank for all of the search queries that are related to that entity, even if the phrase is not present on the page. And Google Ads is actually where I started to discover this shift. So then I started testing in SEO, because again, I'm not a PPC guy. I just do PPC for some of my tree contractor clients. I'm an SEO. And so I started testing that theory by optimizing differently for on-page. And when I realized that, I started testing, and that, by the way, that completely changed on-page optimization methods for how we structure websites now for local businesses and all that. I mean, completely changed everything. But at the same time, that's when I started, because I realized that the algorithm had shifted from keywords to entities, I said, well, we should be building links now based upon relevance instead of on keywords and third-party traditional third-party metrics like DADR and that kind of stuff, which even to this day in 2025, as a white label service provider that sells links, most of the sales calls, not most of them, but a lot of the sales calls that I get on when I'm selling, because I still do most of the sales for my agencies, my agency contacts that I get on a sales call with when I'm pitching them my link building services, a lot of the times they'll ask me, well, what is the DA or the DR of your links? And I say, I don't even know because I don't track those metrics. I don't care about those metrics. What matters to me is the relevance of the links. And so after testing for a few years, from 2020 till through all the way through 2021, I finally learning about the changes in the algorithm from keywords to entities. How did that affect on page? I did a lot of testing in there to try to figure out how to optimize the site structures better and everything to respond better to the algorithm shifts. And then also link building. That's where I said I was also testing a bunch of different link building types and everything else. And when I kind of stumbled across Eric Lancheres, who runs On-Page AI, it's on-page.ai. It's a really good app, and it does on-page optimization and all that kind of stuff. But those apps are a dime a dozen, right? That'll tell you like how to tune the content so that it's more, more optimized and all that kind of stuff. I don't use that tool for on-page optimization. I use it for the link relevancy functions. And so Eric Lancheres, right around December 2021, and I had been testing different link methods anyways, he launched this tool called On-Page AI, and it had this link relevancy functions built into it that connected and integrated with Google's natural language AI. And so you could submit page URLs to Google and have Google return what the topical categories, the natural language categories that Google identified were on those pages. And then you could also, so then you could go look at potential link sources and find link sources that had the same topical categories as their primary topical themes. And then when you published a post onto those blogs, those links then now have relevance matching. So Google assigns value to a link depending upon how relevant it is. And there's multiple levels of relevance that can be applied to a link. And so let me give you an example. Number one, a referring page relevance. Like in other words, if the referring page that contains the contextual link pointing to the target URL has matching topical categories identified by Google in the main content body of that page, meaning the first thing Google does is look at the target URL. So the page URL that has the link pointing to it, and it just determines what the topical categories are of the main content body of that page. Then it looks at the referring page URLs that have a link pointing to the target. And it does the same thing. It scans each one of those pages to determine what are the topical categories identified in each of those pages. And if it's a relevance match, if there's matching topical categories between the referring page and the target URL, that's a relevance match. So that's like a check. That's saying Google, it passes relevance test, number one. Number two is a domain. What are the overall topical themes of the domain in its entirety? So the site, because even a multi-topic site or blog is typically going to have most of the content slanted into one or a handful of topical categories. And so Google wants an overall understanding of what the primary topical themes are of that referring domain or that site in its entirety. And so if you can select only blogs or sites that have their primary topical categories relevant to what eventually you're going to be linking to, and we have control over the content that we're going to publish onto that blog, we can already optimize the content to make sure it matches the same topical categories that it's going to link to. And we've identified now potential link sources that the primary themes, topical themes, are relevant to the topical categories that we need. Then when we publish that post onto that blog, now we've achieved 2 levels of relevance matching. But there's one more level of relevance matching that we can achieve, which is why I use Majestic as my backlink analysis application. I don't care about Ahrefs, I don't care about Moz, I don't care about SEMrush. And honestly, Google doesn't care about Majestic either, just to be clear. Google doesn't care about any third-party proprietary metrics. Those are all metrics that we as SEOs use to determine a link's quality and strength, etc. But Google doesn't care about any of them. And so the reason why I use Majestic is because Majestic has a topical trust flow metric, which is not the metric that matters, but Majestic's topical trust flow is their measure and classification of the topical relevance of external backlink profiles. And so what I use is the Majestic topical trust flow metric to identify I use the Google natural language process to natural language AI to identify potential referring domains that match the same topical relevance categories that I need for the client. But then once I've identified a list of potential referring domains that have proper topical relevance as far as the content, then I look at their backlink profiles. So that's level number 3, the backlink profile pointing to the referring domain. And then I'm only going to select those referring domain or potential link sources that have also relevant backlink profiles, meaning the topical trust flow categories, the most prominent topical trust flow categories in their backlink profile are related to those same topical categories. Now, Majestic's topical trust flow categories and Google's natural language categories are slightly different, but they have very similar category structures. So we can usually find topical trust flow categories that align with Google's natural language categories. So what we try to do with Semantic Links is build links that are relevance matched at 3 levels: referring page, referring domain, and backlink profile pointing to the referring domain. Now, to be clear, we don't do that entirely. Like, not every link that we place is going to be relevance matched at 3 levels. And think about that. If we did that, that would look manufactured. Fishy. It would smell fishy, right? Because nobody's link profile is going to be 100% relevant every single link at 3 levels. And if it is, that's manufactured for sure. And so we still do a mixed bag of relevance matching in the links that we provide to our clients because that's a more natural, organic looking link profile. But we spend the bulk of their monthly retainer budget on the links that have the most relevance because they produce the most value. And the interesting thing about that is that links with, I know that a lot of SEOs still think DA and DR is gospel. Like they swear by DA and DR metrics as whether a link is valuable or not. And I found that if we can provide a link that has even very low DA or DR numbers, but it's fully relevance matched at 3 levels, it will typically produce a much more significant result than a link that has a high DA or DR, but only relevance matched at the referring page level. Which, if you think, that's how most link sellers sell links. They sell links based upon DA, DR, and traffic metrics, or some combination of those 3. And traffic is a validator. So that is a valid signal that should be measured, in my opinion. A link is more valuable if the site receives traffic that the link is placed on. If the page receives traffic, it's even that the link is placed within, it's even more valuable. But you can push relevance even if the blogs don't receive a lot of traffic. And so that's why we focus almost exclusively on relevance. Again, I don't even look at those other metrics. Trust flow is Majestic's kind of proprietary metric for a link quality and strength. Their other metric is citation flow. So trust flow is a measure of link quality and strength. Citation flow is a measure of link quantity. And so those are their Majestic's 2 proprietary metrics. And then topical trust flow is kind of like a secondary metric. But I actually look at topical trust flow first, and then the trust flow value only becomes important if the backlinks are relevant. Because you can have a backlink profile with a high trust flow value, but if it's a non-relevant link profile, Google is largely ignoring those links. So that's why, like I said, it's not the metric topical trust flow that matters, it's the relevance of the links. So that is the metric that I use to determine relevance. And we build all of our links based upon either topical relevance or geographic relevance, because remember, we serve the local market businesses that serve their local markets. And so a link with geographic relevance helps to influence Google Business Profile performance in map search. So that's a link that has location relevance or geographic relevance. A link with topical relevance mostly influences organic search performance, if that makes sense. So I know that was a long-winded answer, guys, but I think it's important to understand the shift that Google has made and why I think all SEOs should be focusing more on relevance than third-party metrics, if that makes sense.
Very cool. Yes, because we have our own internal link building process. You don't know Amalia, but she's doing the link building for us after I gave her the job. Like, I started it, and I've always been on, I don't care about your metrics, it has to be relevant. Like for us, for example, we have some topics about agencies, and agency websites, they don't have great metrics because usually they don't have the time or money to spend getting the DR to 70 plus. So it's somewhere 40, 50, which is fine for us because they have good content, it's relevant, they're going to get links to us. It makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So you talked a lot about paying attention to a lot of different metrics that are not super conventional. So my question to you now is, what were the biggest hurdles that you faced when launching a service that challenges conventional link building metrics such as DA and DR, and how did that influence how you went with things?
Well, that's a great question, and it's still a little bit of a challenge because, like I said, I get on sales calls with agencies or SEO professionals that work for an agency, or it might be their own agency, whatever. And sometimes those, it's they say old habits die hard, or it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, those kind of cliches. And it's true because, when I get an agency or an SEO professional that on a sales call and they ask me like, well, what is the DA or DR? I ask them this, and it is kind of a gotcha question. It's to put them on the spot but I am genuine. I'm sincerely curious to find out why SEOs think DA and DR are so damn important. And so I'll ask them, when they ask me that, I'll turn it around on them. I'll say, well, you tell me before I answer that question, why is DA or DR, whatever it was that they said, why is that so important to you? And then I shut up. and I watch them stammer and stutter to try to come up with a good reason why they even asked that question. You know what I mean? Like, honest to God, I very rarely ever hear a decent answer from anybody about why DA or DR is important to you. You know what I mean? And so for me, the biggest challenge is to show them how to look at SEO through a different lens. Like, in other words, to something insightful about changing their concept of what is important in SEO. And it's hard to do that, but I've learned through sales, like through just studying sales and practicing sales, that the best way to kind of help people to see their business in a different through a different lens, so to speak, from a different perspective, is to ask questions that then that are challenging questions that they have a hard time answering. And that was by the way, I learned that from what's called spin selling. Neil Rackman, the book, and he's got this is an acronym, SPIN, SPIN, for situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. But it's called spin selling. It's fabulous. You ask questions of the prospect on the sales call and let them answer the questions, and they reveal through their own words why their process is inefficient or whatever the case may be. And so they come to the realization through the question and answer process, through their own words, that they have an issue that needs to be resolved, and you are likely the one that can solve their problems. And so that's how I sell, basically, is I will ask questions. Well, I don't so much anymore with Semantic Links because I've got a very thoroughly and well optimized sales process that works, and I just demonstrate what we do, and that almost always sells them. No kidding, but because we use a very data-driven process. But what I'm saying is just asking questions in order to try to get them to realize that their methods are maybe a bit outdated, and that way, it helps to at least open them up to the idea that perhaps they should consider other options than what they have been using for, historically. Because the algorithm, you guys all know, like, the amount of changes that have occurred since the onset of large language models, is unbelievable. It's very difficult to keep up with, even as an SEO professional, the amount of changes that are occurring because of AI and all that stuff. And so it's, I just try to get my prospects or my contacts, my clients, in some cases, to just kind of shift their mindset a bit away from the older SEO tactics to the newer ones. And so that to me has been the biggest challenge, is to get people to keep an open mind about why what they've always known is no longer the most relevant or the most valid. Does that make sense?
For sure. Do you show them like case studies on a call, or how is it like, how do you explain to someone who is like super stuck on these old DR metrics or whatever other metrics have been developed?
We do competitive link analysis reports. We offer one complimentary for all contacts that come onto a sales call with me, and it's interesting, but about 80% of them don't submit the competitive link analysis request form before the sales call, which is interesting because then I get on the sales call. So what I do, just to be clear, is I open up one of my own local SEO agency clients, which is a tree care contractor, and I show the competitive link analysis workbook, which we will analyze up to 3 search queries, the 3 most important search queries for the particular local client of theirs. And what we do is we analyze the top 5 ranked competitors for each of the search queries. We analyze their backlink profile, and then we classify all of the backlinks that are pointing to the ranking pages for each one of those search queries. I don't know if you guys wanted to see a demonstration of what a competitive link analysis report looks like. I could show it to you if you wanted to, but if not, I can just talk about it. What would you guys prefer?
Yeah, go for it.
Let me show you one then. I'll grab a screen real quick and just show you. But this is how we sell our services mainly. And what I was going to say was we typically on the call, a lot of the times the contact will not send the request form with details for us to prepare a competitive link analysis report before the call. So when I'm on the call, I just use one of my own local SEO clients as an example so that I can demonstrate our process to them. And then I extend the invitation to them on the call where I say, listen, I offered this to you in the confirmation message in the calendar event for you to submit one of your own clients for us to prepare this report. And we would have reviewed that on the call, but since you didn't, that's okay. Most don't. So here's a link to where you can submit that form. And then after the call, over the next 2 to 3 days, my team will generate the written report, and then I'll record a screencast video where I'm narrating the report, and then I will provide recommendations out of which of our services I would suggest for this campaign. And I'll send it to you for review, and then afterwards you can just schedule a 15-minute follow-up call with me to ask any questions before purchasing any services. And so that's kind of the process that I go through. But to answer your question, Dion, I'm going to grab the screen real quick and I'll show this to you. So this is a competitive link analysis report form, or excuse me, report. And so we create these Excel files where we go in, and so let me refresh that because it looks like the CSS didn't fully load. All right, so what we do is we go geolocate the browser first. So we use the Bright Local Local SERP Checker, which is this right. Oops, sorry, that's going to be right here. That's this right here to geolocate the browser, because remember, most of our about 90 to 95% of our clients are local business type clients. So we use this to then geolocate the browser to simulate a local search from wherever that location is. In this case, it's Leander, Texas. And then we go search for the queries that were submitted by the client as the most important search queries for that particular company or that client of theirs. And then we pull in the top 5 ranked competitor pages for each of the search query, the top page that is ranking for that specific search query. And then we list the order and the position that we found them over here. Now you'll notice that it jumps from like 3 to 5. That's because position 4 is either this URL or it's like a directory site. Because what we want to identify and analyze are the backlink profiles of other local business type sites. If the client site is a local business type of a website, then we want to identify other top ranking performing websites that are similar type of sites. We don't want to look at Yelp or Angie or Lawn Starter or any of those other huge kind of big directory sites backlink profiles, because we already know why they're ranking. They're ranking because of the sheer strength of their backlink profile. But we want to identify why other local businesses have have ranking pages, so other local business type of sites have ranking pages for this particular query. So we will omit any of the big directory type of style sites, and then sometimes you'll see where it has an asterisk there. That indicates that that is a ranking page that actually has 0 external backlinks pointing to that page. But it breaks the chart, so what we do whenever we have a page URL that is ranking with 0 external backlinks, we still want to reference it here because it is a competitor that is in one of the top 5 ranked competitors. But we put an asterisk there as an indicator that that is a page that has 0 external backlinks. And we assign a value of 1 link to the brand/URL category. So what I was saying was we pull in the top 5 ranked pages. Remember, guys, Google doesn't rank websites for search queries. It ranks web pages. So we want to look at the page level metrics for the ranking pages for each of the search queries that are important to that client and analyze the backlink profiles that are pointing to that specific page. But that's only a starting point, because we then have to zoom out and look at the overall backlink profile to the domains of each of those. So we want to look at domain level metrics as well for each of these websites that have ranking pages for this particular search query. Because 3 or 4 years ago, guys, we could optimize at the page level only and get results. But because of the helpful content update, Google looks now at individual web pages as a smaller part of a larger whole, which means Google takes into consideration the rest of the website when it determines what to do with any individual page on the site. And so we can no longer just stop at page level metrics to determine what we need to do to compete. We need to look at page level metrics as a starting point, but overall domain level metrics as well. And so there's kind of 2 levels of things that we look at, right? Page level metrics, domain level metrics, but we always start with page level metrics because that is the best starting point in my opinion. And so once we pulled in the backlink profiles pointing to each of these ranking pages, then I use a classification system for anchor text for each of the top, or for the, we classify every link anchor text into one of 5 anchor text types. And this is specific or unique to local. And that is brand/URL, brand name or meaning the brand name or company name is the anchor text, or the URL, so a naked URL or URL anchor, or any other type of anchor text that includes a company name or brand name in the anchor text. Even if it's a longer phrase, I consider that a brand anchor. A miscellaneous anchor, another term for that would be generic. Click here, learn more, website, this post, all that kind of stuff. Empty/frame is an iframe or an embed or redirect, or an image backlink without alternative text. If an image backlink has alternative text, the alt text is the anchor text. If it's left empty, that's an empty anchor. A target anchor is a keyword plus location modifier. So that is specific or unique to local SEO. So that's going to be like keyword plus city, or city plus keyword, or keyword plus near me, or one of the variants of near me, nearby, in my area, around me, etc. And then a topic anchor is a keyword only anchor. So that's a keyword without a location modifier. And so then we classify each of those anchor texts from the backlinks that are pointing to that particular URL. We plug all that data into here, and we've got some formulas that average out these data, and it gives us an average anchor text ratio and an average number of links for the top 5 ranked competitors for this particular search query. And that way we know, like you can see, this particular client's, this is the page URL for the target asset that should be ranking for that search query. It only has 3 backlinks. It's a bit over optimized. They have 67% keyword anchors, where the top ranked competitors only have 9%. You understand? So it is a bit over optimized, but this tells us the quantity that we can build, because we can see that the average number of links is 7 for the ranking pages for that query, and this page only has 3. So we know that we can build at least 4 additional links to this page so that we can modify the anchor text into a more appropriate range. Before we can build at least 4 links before we approach or exceed that number. And we try not to exceed the average number of links when possible. Sometimes it's already been exceeded when we take on a project. Sometimes we have to exceed that number in order to achieve, to correct an anchor text ratio imbalance or a topical relevance imbalance. And in that case, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to exceed that number, but we try not to when possible, because I'm sure you guys are aware of this. In SEO, you don't want to be an outlier, because if you stick your head above the crowd in SEO, Google's going to come kick your face in, right? So I always recommend that you hide or play amongst a crowd, right? You hide in the middle of a crowd, but you just do everything with better, more relevant links. And so we always try to stay at or below this number when possible, but sometimes it has to be exceeded. But in any case, this gives us our quantity-based metrics for the specific page, knowing this tells us about how many links we can build before we exceed this number, and which anchor text we should be using when building links to this page, so that we can get this into a more appropriate range based upon what the average of the top 5 competitors are, because Google's already rewarding these. So we should model their backlink profile, but improve it. So the last part of this then is, all of that is really good at the page level for quantity-based metrics. Again, it tells us how many links we can build. It tells us what the anchor texts are we should be using for those links as well. But then we have to determine the relevance metrics, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. And again, as I mentioned before, we use this on-page AI tool because it integrates with Google's natural language AI. That's why I use it. I don't use it for the on-page functions at all. I swear to God, I only use it just for the link relevancy functions. And so this is taking this particular page URL here, plus the top 5 pages, and we submit it to Google and ask Google to tell us, what did you identify as the topical categories on each of these pages? And Google tells us that. So we consolidate that list and deduplicate it and put that there. For each search query, we have the list that Google told us was identified on the top ranked pages, the topical categories. And that's why I mentioned then we match Majestic's topical trust flow categories, which is the backlink, the topical relevance of external backlinks. So we take those categories that match or align with Google's natural language categories, and we list those there as well. So that then when we go to look for potential link sources, we're only going to look for potential link sources that, according to Google, have their primary topical themes in one or a combination of these categories. And then once we have a list of potential link sources that meet that criteria, then we look at the backlink profiles of those potential referring domains and only select those that have relevant link profiles. And the end result, so that you guys can see, just so you see, here's the tier 1 link sheet. We built tiered links for our clients, so we have tier 1 and tier 2 links, etc. But at the tier 1 links, for example, if we look at all the links that we placed in January 2025 for this client, they were all topical links. This is our link identifier. AI means topical link, that we used AI to help us develop the content. LB stands for local blog, or a link with geographic relevance. We'll talk about that later if we have time. But anyways, just wanted to very quickly show you guys the way that we achieve relevance is this way, right? So if we take a look at this, this is what I mentioned earlier about how Google first crawls the target URL and determines what are the topical categories found on this site. Then it looks at each of the referring page URLs that have a link pointing to this, and it scans each one of those, and it determines what topical category was found in the content body of this post or page, and does it match the topical category that any of the topical categories found here. And so you can see some of them it found 2 topical categories, and both of those were present on the target, and some of them it was 1, etc. And then once it crawls and determines the topical categories of the referring page, then it does it one more time, where it scans each of those referring domains at the domain level to look at the entire site, to come up with the overall primary topical themes of that site. So for example, you see it found 3 topical themes at the domain level, and those 3 topical categories were also present here. And so we can see we're able to achieve page level relevance because we have control over the content published within that post. So we can tune the content to match the topical categories required by Google. We only then publish that post on domains that we've identified match those topical categories. And then we can take a look at the backlink profile pointing to that particular backlink, or pointing to that, and we'll go take a look at this, and we'll see the topical categories of this. We're going to go to the root domain, and you can see business, agriculture, and forestry, real estate, construction and maintenance, industrial goods and services. This is the topical trust flow metrics, and it's not the metrics that matters. These are the topical categories of the backlink profile that is flowing into this domain. So that's how we're able to achieve really good results with lower cost links, because we're not selling DA, DR, or even traffic, although traffic is a validator. What we are selling is relevance. Does that make sense? Yeah, and I'm sorry that took so long, but that was a pretty thorough presentation about our process that I think is important context.
Yeah, it's very cool. I have to look at the on-page AI tool and also check Majestic once we run out of Ahrefs, I guess, because we're subscribed yearly, so that's a pity, but...
Majestic's a great backlink. That's all they do is backlink analysis. Like, Ahrefs has so many other tools built into it, but Majestic is a backlink analysis only application, and it's fabulous in my opinion. It's all I use.
Cool. So let's move on to the next question. So, because we've talked about your services so much, can you tell me your 3-step process is the foundation of your service? So it's analyze the computation, develop a plan, and then execute and report on it. How did you develop and refine this methodology?
Trial and error. I mean, that's SEO, right? Trial and error. So we really have kind of we call it the 4 pillars of semantic links now, and it always starts with competitive link analysis. Those reports are the starting point of everything. I do never build a link to any project without looking at that data. I get members and students and YouTube channel, audience members or whatever all the time that reach out and say, hey, what would you suggest for this? And I point them right to my competitive link analysis report order form. Say, go buy that, and I'll provide you with a recommendation, but I won't do it without looking at the data. So we do competitive link analysis is pillar number 1. Number 2 is improve brand authority, because brand authority in local SEO is the most important thing the 2 most important things in local SEO right now is brand authority and site efficiency. Those 2 things are the most important in local SEO in my opinion. So number 2 is to build brand authority. Number 3 is to increase relevance, both topical and geographic relevance. And number 4 is to increase search exposure, which is really a result of the previous 3 steps. And so how did we develop that? Just again through trial and error. I've been running my own local SEO agency for almost 15 years. And so, I've learned over the years that, a lot of SEOs, and I coach a lot of local SEO types, and I know a lot of people, they don't, I've learned that you have to systematize your business. You have to systematize your processes, or else you'll never run a successful business. You'll hit a ceiling very quickly because you will be overwhelmed with work and everything else, and it's just hard to manage all of that stuff. So it's really funny, but it's the white label services that helped me to really learn about how important it is to process or systematize your business. Because I didn't have productized services in my own local SEO agency for working with tree contractors. Every single SEO campaign was a custom campaign, every one of them. And that's how most of the members that come into my coaching community, they come in with that type of a model where they will pitch a local business client, and then it's a custom proposal for every single client. And I'm sure you guys know, sometimes you can spend hours on a custom proposal just developing the proposal, and it never gets accepted. So you've just wasted a ton of time on developing this custom plan for somebody that never even ends up using your services. So it was through the white label services when I first started Semantic Links, it wasn't productized. Anyways, long story short, I started in January 2022, and in April in 2022 is when I got signed up with you guys at SPP. And then I really started productizing the services for Semantic Links. And then I realized the value of that, because we were able to start scaling very, very quickly at Semantic Links, and the revenue started going up, and that's very encouraging. And so then I said, well, let me apply this same kind of a methodology to my local SEO agency, which is called Tree Care HQ, for Tree Care Headquarters. And so I started productizing my services for local SEO services. And boy, I'll tell you what, it made it all the difference in the world, because even my own local SEO agency now, I'm able to scale it so much easier, right? Because we have productized services. There's no custom proposals ever We already have offers available so that when we pitch, they're right there. They're ready to go. We've got checkout pages ready to go. So the speed with which we can go from a sales call to a closed deal is a hell of a lot shorter now because we don't have all that wait step and everything else. And now we've got nurture sequences for every one of those products or the offer bundles, etc. So once I get off a sales call, even if they don't close on the call, which most of the time they don't, we just plug them right into an already predefined nurture sequence that helps to kind of continue warming them up for that particular service that we identified was the best, most appropriate for them on the call. And so the productizing and using, developing systems and productized services, which I know you guys pitch a lot as SPP, has been absolutely transformative for my agencies. Hands down. It's one of the best things I've ever done.
I mean, speaking of your process, this is I think a perfect segue into this. Speaking of your process, I wanted to ask if you could share with us a specific success story where your semantic approach created dramatic improvement for a client when traditional methods failed them.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk on my tree service contractor side of things because those are my retail clients. I can't really speak for the white label agency clients because they manage the kind of retail side of it. So, but for tree service contractors, I mean, I've got a number of them, kind of stories that I could tell. But since really the change of the algorithm, because I've got a lot of previous stories about over the years, like working with tree service contractors that started off with just a pickup truck and a chainsaw and ended up with, 3 chipper trucks and a boom truck and, stump grinders and all this stuff over the course of a few years, like really grew their business through SEO, right? Helping them to just have a really good SEO presence and all of that. But more recently, since the change in the algorithm, which from a, keyword-based to entity-based algorithm, I've got a tree contractor in Beverly, Massachusetts, Sequoia Tree Service, Sequoia Tree and Crane Service, who, when I started with them a couple of years ago, they had barely a presence at all in their own local market, even though it's a really well-established company. And the gentleman's a certified arborist and all this stuff. And we took them to now they dominate a very large area in Essex County, Massachusetts. I've got another one, a more recent one that we just started with in January, the one that I was just showing you guys an example of, the competitive link analysis report, Box Tree Care. They're down in Leander, Texas, which is a suburb of Austin. And again, he was a startup. Last year, I think he might have started in 2023, but in 2024 is when I got connected with him. And this goes back to what I was saying about, I don't hard pitch or hard sell any of my clients, whether it's a white label agency, so an SEO that I'm selling to. I don't really do any hard sales closing. I just show them like, look, this is what we do. If it makes sense, hey, let's work together. If not, maybe you learned something on today's call, because I show them the competitive link analysis. With tree service contractors, I also use that kind of an approach, not where I demonstrate all the SEO that we're going to do, because they wouldn't understand it, nor would they even care. But I talk to them about like, hey, look, this is the types of things that we've been able to achieve for other tree contractors, and we can do this for you. And here's some of the things that we have, or services that can help to start to do this for your business too. If it makes sense for us to work together, great. If not, hey, it's okay. We're going to be here whenever you're ready. And if it's all right with you, when we get off this call, I'm going to send you some additional information via email about what we've talked about today. So I always get their permission to send them additional information, and then I leave the door open for them for when they're ready. And so to get back to your question, Box Tree Care example, they got connected with us in Tree Care HQ sometime in the early part of 2024. And I didn't close them on an SEO package until December of 2024. So it was months and months and months of additional nurturing before they came, and then before Josh Box is the owner, he came to me in December of 2024 and scheduled an appointment on my calendar with me, and I got on a call with him, and again, by that time he was ready. It was time and circumstance had changed in his business to put him in a position where he was now ready to hire a marketing agency to help his business grow. And since December, we've taken him now. I mean, now we're going into almost May, so it's been over 4 months, but he's dominating the Leander, Texas area and starting to expand now out into additional areas like Georgetown and Cedar Park, anyways, that whole area. So it's just been really cool to watch, especially like when it's a more established business and you show marginal gains. That's not nearly as exciting, in my opinion, as when you take a new business or a business that didn't have a digital presence, and in a matter of 3 to 6 months, you get them dominating their local area. That to me is very exciting. It's rewarding.
Very cool. Yeah. Following up on that, because you mentioned like that the nurturing period is a few months sometimes. You recommend that there's a minimum 3 month commitment for your results. How do you manage like the expectations and demonstrate the progress during this period?
Great question. Well, we use Bright Local Reporting, which does organic rank tracking, local search good tracking, citation tracking, etc. So we can show an improvement, or we can show the results, whether they're negative or positive or negative. It'll show the results. But and when I say I ask for a 3 month commitment, we don't do contracts at Semantic Links. I've never liked contracts when it comes to marketing services, because look, if we're doing our job, they should want to continue using our services. If we're not getting them the results, they should be free to leave. Likewise, I don't want to be stuck in a contract, because what happens if the client turns out to be a pain in my ass? I don't want to be stuck with them either. So I don't like to use contracts. And so, but I do ask them to give us 3 months. If you're going to commit to a subscription, give us 3 months to show you results, because Google's very slow at indexing, crawling and indexing stuff now. And so even when we place links today and submit them for indexing, it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks before Google really recognizes those links. So if you give us 3 months, when we send the third monthly report, which we always send a monthly report within about 5 to 7 days before their next subscription bill is processed. That way they can review the report, and if there's any issues or they decide that they want to cancel, they're free to cancel. They have time to do so between when they receive the report and when their next subscription bill. But I always ask them, because I tell them, like, look, when we send the third monthly report, you're really only looking at the first 2 months of link building. And so by that time, we have typically shown a month-over-month performance gain. Even if it's marginal, it's still performance gains. And so then usually by month 3, the client will say that they've reviewed it with their client, and they'll say, you know what, this is looking good, let's keep this subscription going. And that's my goal. So that's why typically when I do a recommendation for which of my services or subscription plans would be most relevant for that campaign, I'm always keeping in mind that I don't want to over-recommend a subscription service or level just to get their clients quick results, because if it eats up all the profit margin for the agency, what's the incentive for them to send that client to me? You know what I mean? So what I always try to do is only recommend the bare minimum that I think is going to be required to show performance gains month over month, so that their client is happy with the improvement. My client, the agency, has a larger margin that they retain on a monthly basis, and we get the subscription for longer. So it ends up being win-win-win for everybody involved.
All right, love it. Well, I mean, I think this is a perfect time for us to move over with that example into the systems and how you actually run things. So my first question for you regarding that is, how has implementing a client portal through SPP changed the way that you deliver your semantic link building services to agencies?
Well, for me, it's been huge because, like I said, we now have, productized services, which has been super important for us to scale. I've got 28 full-time team members now at Semantic Links alone. So we've got a very large team, a very large worker base. And so in order to have, that's why I got hooked up with SPP, is because I think back in, March and April of 2022, when I got hooked up with you guys was in April, I believe. I had, at the time, maybe 9 or 11, something like that, employees. And it was becoming very difficult to manage communication and the workflow for any one campaign, because we didn't have a good system for it. And that's why I got introduced to SPP. And I remember SPP, I got introduced to SPP from Loganix or Loganix. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but that's how I got introduced to SPP, was through them, because I had used their services for many years. And so I always liked that platform, and the SPP platform. I always thought it was intuitive. It was easy to navigate as a user and everything else. And so I looked into it and I said, you know what, this is probably what I'm gonna, I want to try this. I'm familiar with it because of being a user in some other platform, like Loganix, for example. And so I purchased it, and I integrated some other things, like we have a database for contact management and project management, and we use ClickUp for workflow management and that kind of stuff. But SPP is our sales site. It's our payment processor. It acts as kind of like our initial database for CRM, even though we do, newsletter marketing outside of SPP and all that kind of stuff. All I do is export my contact list from SPP that then gets imported into my newsletter list. That way I'm only sending emails to those that have actually logged into the SPP dashboard, our dashboard. But for me, like I said, it's made it a lot easier to manage orders, manage clients, billing, like that was the biggest thing for me, was initially billing, but it's turned out to be a lot more valuable to me because of the ticket-based system, um, you know, um, the subscription services, all that other kind of stuff. So, like I said, I wouldn't have been able to scale my white label agency without SPP, not nearly as efficiently for sure. And just so you guys know, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but we have 2 other SPP accounts. I got one for Semantic SEO, which is another white label agency, and one for Local Fury, which is a CTR engagement service. So we liked SPP so much, we bought 3 accounts.
Love to hear it. Yeah, that's brilliant. Have you ever considered building something on your own, or did the experience in Loganics just convince you, okay, let's just get off the shelf solution and get started instead of doodling around?
Yeah, SEO has enough moving parts as it is. I don't need to also take on the challenge of trying to develop a system like what you guys have done. You guys do a damn good job of it, so I'm sticking with you.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Yeah, like speaking of SPP a little bit more, you mentioned that you're offering fully transparent reporting to your clients. What kind of reporting capabilities are you using inside SPP to just make it easier for them?
Well, in SPP, the way that I do it is I create this like embedded Excel file in the client report section. I can demonstrate that very quickly if you guys want to see it, just very quickly, because I think it's a pretty unique way that we do this. Okay, so I'm going to sign in as a user, and you can see in the client report section, this is the way that we do it. We set up this embedded Excel file that shows all of the clients that we're managing for our client, the agency. And so this is where we keep track of all of those reports. So the link workbook is that competitive link analysis workbook that we were looking at here. And then we provide those Bright Local reports. So those are the local marketing reports that I mentioned a moment ago, that we have organic rank tracking, local search grid tracking, and citation tracking. And we white label those for our agencies. So like my local SEO agency is called TreeCare HQ. So you can see that that's there. And then we also provide them the link to the ClickUp card, because as I mentioned before, we use ClickUp as our project management applications. So we use ClickUp so that the client can see, with fully transparent reporting, the activities that are occurring by my team and I. They can see if there's any outstanding items that we have yet to build as part of their campaign. They can see what stage the campaign is in at any given time, because we have 5 like kind of stages in our workflow for any given month. And so they can see what stage the campaign is. And in my project manager, her name is Samantha, she comments in the links that are placed after she's confirmed that my team has placed the links and that they're publicly, that they're live and published on the web. She comments those in over here. You'll see where I'm giving my team instructions. So we make this available to our clients in the SPP dashboard so that they can, at any time, they can see in real time exactly what it is that we're doing. Because, that's one of the biggest things that I had a problem with when I used white label services, was the lack of transparency. As an SEO professional, I want to know what the hell the white label company is doing, right? I want to know what they're doing. And a lot of the reports I would get from white label agencies were very vague, like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. and I hated that. Because, so that's why I said when I started Semantic Links in white label services, I wanted to practice full transparency, and SPP's made it easy, because I'm able to, at least on the level that I have, I'm able to make that embed for each account profile. So we can add or subtract campaigns to that Excel file very, very easily now.
Nice. Yeah, the transparency has been a very common thing that we've seen in our case studies recently, that everyone is recommending to be as transparent as possible with clients. So this is definitely something that works. That's a big tip for everyone. Transparency works.
It makes them stickier. You know what I mean? They stick longer if you're transparent about it, because sometimes my whole team and operation is very personnel driven. We still haven't implemented a whole lot of AI. We've got some automations and stuff, but we haven't implemented a whole lot of AI. And so we make mistakes. We're human, and my team makes mistakes. And because we're fully transparent, if we make a mistake, we'll own up to it. We don't ever try to cover it up. If we made a mistake, we acknowledge that we made the mistake, and we'll correct it. We'll correct it immediately. And so I think the fully transparent reporting helps to build that confidence in the clients in using our services, because they realize that we provide transparency, and if we do make a mistake, we're going to own up to it. We'll correct it immediately, and then sometimes we'll even make up for it somehow. So
Awesome. Well, I also noticed actually that your services, in your services, sorry, you offer different packages based on competition levels. So I wanted to ask, how have you configured your intake forms and order forms to process all these different variations that you have?
Well, we really only have, well, we have three primary subscription levels. And so we also have I just last a couple of weeks ago created a quarterly version of it. So when I say subscription levels, they're monthly subscription levels. But I created a quarterly option for one particular client last week or a couple of weeks ago. But anyways, so we have three primary subscription levels, and everything else are just one-off services. And so because of that, it's fairly easy to plug a client into a particular subscription level. Now, if they're going to do one-off services, that's up to them. So that it's nice to have the orders with the individual communication threads for each order. So I have to instruct my clients often to use that. So like in our welcome message that we send to them after a new order is received, we tell them like, hey, if you have any questions, please communicate in this thread. Because otherwise you get a separate support ticket or a separate email, and the whole team doesn't have access to all those different communication points. And so, again, SPP has made it very easy for me to keep all the communication relevant to that particular order in a particular thread, so that the whole team has access to the chat history, and that's critically important. So, managing all the subscriptions and everything. Again, I have a project manager and I also have an executive assistant, and those Samantha and Hazel, those are the two that they basically they manage all the operations with the team. They report to me, and so sometimes I will jump in, but those are, the project manager and the executive assistant insulate me from a lot of the day-to-day operations, and they're the ones that kind of manage the workflows through SPP, etc. And then I just jump in when needed. But again, the fact that we have a platform and a proper organizational structure now with team leaders and workers and all that kind of stuff, it's made it that's given us the ability to scale, and it's also allowed me to focus on, for the most part, higher level activities. Now, I still get stuck in the weeds sometime with answering support tickets and stuff. I still do that because I try to create a personalized approach and create a connection with my clients anyways. But at the same time, it's enabled us to kind of scale and removed me from the day-to-day operations to a degree to allow me to focus on higher level things, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, so for our final topic, you've built a business around adapting to Google's evolving understanding of relevance. So we've talked a lot about relevance. What's your next big prediction for local SEO that most agencies aren't really prepared for yet?
AI, I mean, I know everybody's trying to prepare for it, but how do we optimize and manipulate AI and large language models, right? In order to have the large language models promote our local businesses when a query would be relevant for that business to be promoted. Like, in other words, that's kind of the next thing is how do we, because, Google's losing market share. There's no question Google's losing market share, and especially from the younger folk. They're going to Perplexity and all those other places now to look in search, and not so much Google. And I think it's going to be a slower effect on like true local search, because local search is still very much driven by maps. And so that's still, I think, going to be slower to decline than general organic search would be. But it's still declining. And so I think it's important to learn how to optimize and manipulate large language models to regurgitate information that you want it to. So, and that's interesting. Peter Drew, who's a colleague of mine, he's been teaching and kind of learning and trying to develop ways to manipulate large language models, which is what we do in SEO anyways, right? We manipulate search engine results, right? So that's what we do, is manipulate stuff. And so the large language models, the way that you manipulate them as it stands right now, and this is a bit scary in my opinion, but it is what it is there's no discernment. Like, in other words, large language models do not discern whether something is true or not. All they will do is repeat what they've been, when there's enough evidence out there, whether it's true or not, if there's enough evidence out there, they'll repeat it, regurgitate it, right? And so they have no discernment for whether it's true or factual. And so if we can produce enough content and say it enough times across enough platforms, especially the platforms that each language model kind of has its own seed set of sites that it uses as authoritative. So if we can identify what those seed sets of sites are that then we can feed content into that says what we want it to say about a particular business, then it's much more likely that if somebody queries that large language model for, the best tree service in Austin, Texas, for example, we can get it to return results that say Box Tree Care is the best tree care service in Austin, Texas, because it's been said enough times online across enough of those platforms that are considered authoritative and trustworthy by the large language models that they'll just regurgitate it. And so I think the next step for us as SEOs is learning how to properly feed data into the large language models so that it's more likely that that's the data that will be served to somebody querying that large language model when it's relevant to a particular business client of ours. Does that make sense?
Yes, brilliant. Thank you so much.
All right, Bradley, thank you so much for hopping on today and answering all the questions that we had. You provided invaluable information, so I just wanted to thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you guys having me on. One last thing is, and this is not a pitch for anything that's monetizable, but we do have my Semantic Mastery. If you go to youtube.com @Semantic Mastery, you guys can check it out. We've been answering local SEO related questions for over 10 years. We do a weekly webinar, Hump Day Hangouts, like a podcast, essentially Q&A webinar series. For over 10 years we've been doing it. So we've got over 4,000 videos on our YouTube channel that are question and answer videos about local SEO. It's 100% free. I encourage anybody to go check it out, get subscribed, ask questions in Hump Day Hangouts. You can post questions ahead of time and we'll answer them. So if you're not live, you can still catch the answers on the replay, all of that. But I highly encourage it because I love doing those. Once a week, I spend an hour answering local SEO questions. And you guys just mentioned, I love this stuff, man. I really do. And so I enjoy doing that. And I always encourage people that have any questions about local SEO, come join us over there and just ask your questions. I'm happy to provide any support.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us all your knowledge today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.